the importance of listening to your customers, why it's essential to be a flexible marketer, and a discussion on the constant state of change within the digital marketing landscape. That and more on this episode of Advertising Influencers.
Advertising Influencers. Conversations with today's top-tier marketers from Silicon Valley and beyond. Powered by Instapage, the most powerful landing page solution.
Hello. Hope you are doing very well whenever and wherever you are listening. My name is Ander, marketing educator at Instapage, where I and the rest of my team are on a mission to continually lower the cost of customer acquisition. It is a pleasure to have you here for Advertising Influencers, the podcast where we sit each week with CMOs, VPs, and other marketing thought leaders to discuss how they are breaking through the noise within the current marketing technology landscape. If you were able to join me for the previous episode, you know exactly how awesome Zach Onisko, the VP of Growth at Hired, is, and how important it is to responsibly manage your advertising budget. Always a pleasure connecting with Zach, and it is a pleasure connecting with our guest for this episode as well. We are going a slightly different route. Most of the guests who have joined us so far for Advertising Influencers hold marketing leadership positions at companies that are making a big splash and breaking through the noise of their respective industries one way or another. However, there is no doubt that while internal marketing teams are still very important, agencies also play a tremendous role in the marketing landscape as well, which is exactly why for this episode, we are hanging out with Tye DeGrange, the founder and CEO of Round Barn Labs, a growth marketing consultancy based here in San Francisco. Tye has been deep in the marketing and advertising spaces for his entire career, and while most traditional marketers, before the days of digital marketing to the degree that it is now, were in the branding and position space, Tye operated in direct response, which still accounted for dollar-for-dollar ROI. He's worked with a number of impressive organizations, including running the affiliate marketing for eBay Motors. With the amount of time that Tye has spent in the field, I'm incredibly excited to share this conversation with you. So, without further ado, let's go say hello to Tye. One of the things that is really cool about doing these podcast interviews is that I get to interact with some of the founders, some of the leaders of organizations that good friends of mine work at. Eric Manstoff, he's here at Round Barn Labs, been here for, I want to say, a few months or so. And right now I'm talking with the founder, Tye DeGrange. Tye, how you doing?
Doing great. So good to chat with you today.
Tye, you've got a really vast variety of experience. And Round Barn Labs is a consultancy, so I know you're working with a number of different types of clients right now, but you know, I know that you've been with eBay, you've been with a number of other companies. So even though in the introduction to this podcast, I told our audience a little bit about who you are, what you do, where you came from, maybe we could just get that in your own words. What I like to call the 30-second nutshell of your professional journey.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd say it started in real direct response offline, actually, over 12 years ago. Really got a lot of experience doing DR with a company that was really innovative in software and in a place where you wouldn't expect it, in a very offline capacity. And so even before online, I think I looked at things from a very DR, cost per call, cost per click kind of perspective, cost per purchase, cost per, in a very DR-like way, as opposed to like a very branding imagery way.
Sure.
Just from a professional experience. But from there, I was able to get into a startup by the name of AdBright, which some people are aware of. Got exposed to folks that went on to build companies like ClearSlide, MoPub, early folks at AppNexus. So I was really lucky to be around some very smart, capable startup minds at what I would call kind of that Web 2.0 world. Was after the .com bust. Pud or Phil Kaplan had a big following, made quite a name for himself with his book, started AdBright, which is essentially one of the first display ad networks.
And
that's
so
right. Competed with DoubleClick, value click, etc. So that was a fantastic experience getting into early display and display marketing, helping clients, helping big advertisers navigate that world. I would say that from there, got really pulled into the affiliate space. And so some people refer to it as the redheaded stepchild of digital marketing. It's not always the most interesting or sexy, but oftentimes it makes up a really big percentage of a large company or even medium-sized company's digital spend. And it can be very high on return on ad spend if it's managed properly. So I was able to really grow the StubHub program significantly while I was at Commission Junction, now Conversant. From there, I was able to kind of get the attention of eBay, and they brought me into their team and was part of the eBay internet marketing team. That really changed things, I think, for me, being able to see how eBay thinks about problems, how a company of that size and scope looks at things, and getting access to the folks on the internet marketing team at eBay was pretty significant for me in my career and my development. I mean, being able to work with folks that went on to Airbnb, Facebook, Fanatics, various companies now, as you can expect, and also get exposed to a lot of other channels. Affiliate is in its own way kind of this microcosm of various channels. An affiliate can essentially drive traffic for a brand like a Nike in a variety of ways, and so long as it's abiding by the structures of that program. So in that space, in that quote channel affiliate, you get exposed to a lot of other marketing channels and tactics. And I actually heard from a lot of marketing leaders out there that folks that come out of the affiliate space are thinking about things in a way that is beneficial to growth and is very growth by any means necessary in terms of its theory, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And sure, affiliate is very, very important. I mean, there's a reason that we have someone managing our affiliate channel at Instapage full time, Sean.
Yeah,
he
awesome.
is. That's basically what he does. So totally do understand the value there.
Yeah, and I think going into the detail of that a bit is helpful to understand kind of the progression. But with eBay, I got exposed to just a lot of different areas of the space and expanded that kind of perspective of what you could do with marketing from a paid search perspective, from a display perspective, from a SEO perspective. SEO became really interesting to me. Content became more critical and interesting to me, and in a time when content was starting to grow significantly in the past 5 years. We've seen content kind of explode for brands like HubSpot. You're seeing it all over the place. I mean, you're living it with Instapage, right? So
oh yeah, we are deep in content.
Yeah.
Lots of stuff coming out every day.
Yeah, it's awesome. So I think for me, being able to take that experience and then go back into the startup world at a Kleiner Perkins backed startup where I was heading up acquisition, I felt like it was a sweet spot for me from a career perspective, being able to manage multiple channels and not necessarily be beholden to one particular tactic or one particular channel, but really feel like you could become almost owning paid, owning acquisition, but then also owning other areas and understanding other areas like SEO and content. And it was kind of the early days of growth. I mean, I wasn't saying the word growth marketing. No one was talking about growth hackers in 2011, 2012, or at least it wasn't quite that time yet. But I think that you're starting to do those things. You're starting to think about full funnel. You're starting to think about not just acquisition, but retention. You're starting to think about onboard testing and A/B testing a lot more. So I think the innovative folks in the space were doing those things that were going to become, what Sean Ellis called growth hacking and what Brian Balfour made famous with Co-Elevate and now Reforge. And so I think a lot of those things that we're doing now as a company at Round Barn Labs, I think had its, nascence and kind of origins from those eBay days and those first startup running multiple channels.
And then you ended up here.
Or
I should say you started this organization around Barn.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's kind of funny. So, it's been 3 years now. It's wild that it's been that long. It seems to have gone by quite fast. Certainly rewarding to be able to say, I kind of want to create our own little culture, right? Our own little team, kind of how we want to operate. And that was one of the big motivations to be able to do that. I think another one is I've been so fortunate to work with so many great people over the years, 12 plus years in digital marketing, and you come across so many amazing people with so many great strengths. And so the thought was, how do you pull together teams of really great people that you genuinely enjoy working with? You spend a lot of time working with people, and you spend a lot of time in your working life. So why not, make it as constructive and effective and fun as possible, because it's a big part of your life. And to be able to bring over, a lot of complementary skill sets. Obviously one team or one person is going to have their objectives or their perspective on how to grow a business or how to be effective marketing team. And I think being able to pull in a lot of different, someone with more technical skills, someone with more analytical skills, someone with more content skills, someone with a really, really deep SEO expertise. The concept of kind of like a super team became really attractive, and the concept that I wanted to try to create with this. In some ways, I think we've been able to do that. It's been really exciting.
Yeah, and from what I hear from Eric and Laura Lynn and a number of the other people I know who have worked with you personally, that sounds exactly like what you're doing. You guys offer something interesting, growth as a service. What was the impetus for that? And also, on a similar note, perhaps this is the same question, what was the impetus for really wanting to start this consultancy as opposed to working with one organization full-time and instead work with a number of different clients?
Yeah, great question. I think in a lot of ways, this wave of, VC funding, it was quite exciting and kind of almost wild for some people in 2012, 2013, 2015 especially. Things started to kind of calm down a bit maybe in the early part of this year. But the reality is it seems like there's this large wave of investment coming into innovation and startups. And so I think while there is a lot of interest and excitement around going in-house, helping someone full-time, being able to focus fully there, I think that for me, being able to help essentially provide the picks and the shovels in the gold rush has worked for folks in the past, has worked for folks now, and thought, let's give this a try. Let's help them with the right growth tools. Let's give them the right level of advice. Let's guide them through this challenging period. And let's work with the right partners for us, but also guide them through these challenging times of, okay, how do we get to that A round, or how do we get to that B round, or how do we get our first 1,000 customers, or how should we think about content, or what do we not do? What are some tactics and strategies given our stage, given our business, given our customer persona? What do we not want to focus on? So the level of focus that Brian Balfour, Morgan Brown, growth practitioners like that really emphasize and talk about is something that we try to help not only do ourselves well, but also help with our clients and make sure that they're focused on the right things and not distracted by some of the things that are easily distracted.
Yeah, certainly.
Distracted
Understand
by.
that. One of the things that we do at Instapage, me personally, as well as our founder, Tyson, I had this conversation with him actually just the other day about advertising and really what that means. And a lot of people, when they think about advertising, they immediately go to this spending money, getting ROI on your SEM, whatever it is. There's this bigger part of it, though. It's about breaking through the noise. It's also about just the message that you're putting out there and how you're articulating what your product and what your company is about. And I'm curious, what was maybe your general philosophy around advertising, maybe around paid acquisition, but around messaging and breaking through the noise before you started here? And how did that change? How has that changed in the past few years?
Something you mentioned earlier around growth as a service is resonating with me, and I think I'd love to speak to that before maybe it gets lost.
Sure.
I think it's interesting to think about for me, I worked with a lot of great agency teams and hired a lot of them, managed a lot of them, saw how a lot of them worked in different channels. And I found that it was always interesting to find ones that were focused on one channel and departments that were focused on one channel. And it was oftentimes, I found that where I could be holistic and kind of agnostic to channel and tactic and think about what's best for the business from a spend revenue perspective, from a operational perspective, that felt like a better outcome to me for clients and for businesses and for people than kind of having the teams really uber focused on particular channels and tactics. So I think there's always going to be certain channels and that live on and continue and are critical to businesses, and that's just the way that works. And there's agencies that build businesses around, one particular channel, whether it's paid social or paid search. But it just felt like from we tried to take a stance with Round Barn Labs when I built the business of kind of saying we don't want to rely on one particular tactic. We don't want to be, these are the few tracking solutions we use. We wanted to be very pro advertiser, pro brand, pro client, and say, if you need a certain solution, we want to help guide that solution. We didn't want to say, it was more like a growth by any means necessary. And that has its challenges in its own ways as we build this business, obviously. But we've tried to be very agnostic. And so that when we say growth as a service, or we say, agnostic, channel agnostic or tracking tool agnostic, it's not, we try to be very open to what's going to be best for the business, because every startup especially, but every business is very different and very unique. And I think the one size fit all, as much as that works to kind of grow and automate, it's not really effective, I think, for the internal, CMO, VP, CEO, founder, early stage director of marketing, or even mid stage. I think they need some level of flexibility and kind of hearing what they really need, and then trying to guide and help them with that. So I think I wanted to speak to that question that you had earlier. I think it was
I appreciate that.
Important to think about. The other distinction is growth as a service is something that I think Brian Balfour has done a great job of articulating, as he does a lot of things. Fans and collaborators with him, he's fantastic for a lot of things. But we're really not, to be candid, I don't think we're really fully reaching the growth as a service model yet. Truly what that entails is what a modern growth team is, which involves your engineering skills. Yes, we have the analytical skills, but true data science sometimes, true product resources sometimes. We delve into some of those worlds, but I think we're building towards growth as a service, to be candid. I don't know too many that can say we're an outsourced growth as a service team. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's an exciting opportunity. I think it's something that's interesting. I think it's something I've thought about doing more of. We do have really great partnerships and close partnerships with engineers we trust. We sit in a room full of phenomenal engineers, which we love working with, and we've worked on projects with before. But to be candid, we're not yet that true growth as a service, which is defined, by Brian as kind of this. You've got an engineer, you've got a PM, you've got a PM lead who's leading the project, you've got an analytics person, you've got a data science person, you've got a product person, maybe some content folks. We're doing elements of that, but I think the question is, do we build towards that, or is that something that teams want to have in house, and then they maybe work with us to do paid acquisition or analytics or a combination of content and funnel analysis. I don't think we've been able to really pull in the engineers yet. Another funny story is I was at Launch Conference. It's not that funny, but we were at Launch Conference, and being the growth marketing enthusiast, passionate person I am, I got a chance to meet Chamath. He started the growth team at Facebook, and share with him what we were building, and one of his biggest things was engineers, right? So said, get yourself some engineers. And so I think to be truly growth, in the definition that we know it now, based on your experience at Tradecraft, Instapage, talking to folks like Zach at Hired, and our knowledge of the space, having that ability and that buy-in from the executive to have ownership over engineering growth in the code base to make changes that will then improve revenue and traffic is something that we're getting into, but we haven't really delved into engineering yet. So long-winded answer on your question earlier, but I think it's an important, interesting one.
In other words, you guys have plenty of room to grow.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Let's go back to a previous question I had about how your philosophy has changed coming into this consultancy role, coming out of working with organizations full-time as the head of acquisition, head of affiliate, etc. How has that philosophy changed about breaking through the noise, about getting your messaging out to your segments, out to your personas, whether it's through paid or through other means?
That's a good question. I think for us, we love the concept of being able to bring creative concepts, whether it's a brainstorm around brand, or if it's a brainstorm around tagline, or whether it's digging in with the client around what's the customer personas and challenging some of those assumptions, or just getting more data for the client around what are some other interesting insights around the customer personas they're going after. Because a lot of times, without truly understanding the customer persona, without truly understanding who you're trying to really speak to, I think rising above the noise becomes really tough. And I think it's easy to fall into that trap of saying something bland, saying something that's not going to get people's attention, saying something that's maybe on brand but not really going to get your message across or achieve your goal.
And on that note, I think that there are a lot of organizations that they determine these personas, they're really happy with them, and when it becomes necessary to maybe make an adjustment or to pivot or something like that, it might be hard to let those initial personas go, or to get more granular with those personas. Is that something that you've observed in your time doing this?
Definitely. And I think in psychology and as people, I think it's hard for sometimes people to let go of certain held beliefs or assumptions. And I think it's fun to, when we collaborate with teams that are able to have a certain set of hypotheses and be willing and able to adjust and move and, you know, have your core beliefs, but be able to take in data and quickly evolve and adjust your perspective on who you should be going after and why and how that customer should be spoken to and what the brand kind of parameters and brand guidelines are. I think CEOs, head of marketing, that yes, they have their kind of core guidelines and how they work, but I think folks that are willing to be intellectually honest and really push themselves for level of that stringent testing to say, hey, we're gonna let some of the data guide us in this, and the data is not going to control our every move or how we want to build our brand, maybe who we found to be our core customer, but we're going to let it inform, we're going to let it guide, and we're going to let it be a part of this conversation, you know. And I think that's extremely helpful. Obviously, data is talked about constantly within the growth marketing world. Data is talked about in so many different ways in our space, in digital marketing especially. But I think those operators that are running a company, those founders that can have a passion for what they're doing, but also be really open to listening to the customer and listening to data points that help, it's extremely powerful in my opinion. To answer your question, rise above the noise. And as much as that's not easy to do, I think that's important. And be willing to take some risk and break some eggs, you know. I think that's another one that's not easy for people to get through. You know, they want it to be perfect sometimes, and that can be the enemy of rising above the noise as well.
Yeah, and I think a lot of perfection leads people to have this resistance towards the level of personalization that is possible now when you're targeting a specific audience, when you've developed these personas that are really powerful for driving all of your growth frameworks. You can still get more specific with how you're targeting your ads, with the content that's in ads based upon how they are targeted, whether it's AdWords, whether it's Facebook, whatever it may be. Do you find that companies right now are taking advantage of the degree to which personalization can really be used in terms of getting your message out there and breaking through that noise?
I don't think they are. I think it's a great question. I think that it's getting better quickly, but in our experience, I mean, we find that's the fun part of what we do, is we get to look under the hood and kind of do little mini audits of what the current marketing plan looks like. You know, paid social is a great example of the level of detail around targeting and custom audience, lookalike audience, targeting by employer, targeting by age, leveraging other data points that the teams have, using that in a multi-touch way. So every, you know, stage of the funnel is getting some level of personalization or a message that's unique to that stage that they're in, whether they came back or whether they didn't come back or they haven't signed up. So it's a low percentage of companies and clients, I think, that either know that or do that. And oftentimes it's just they don't have the resources to get to it yet, or they plan on it, or they know there's this vast world of personalization out there that they're not touching on. And that's fun because I think in a lot of ways people look to us for that. They look to us to say, get under the hood in paid social and let's get the numbers going up and to the right with your help in building a system of testing and isolating variables and things as such. So in a lot of ways, the challenge and the lack of it happening is a great opportunity for teams like us that like going in and doing it.
And for products like Instapage.
Totally.
That's a big part of our mission, which is continually lower the cost of customer acquisition. And one of the lowest hanging fruits by which to do that is attacking this personalization in a meaningful way. I'd like to take a step back to the beginning of your career and how that relates to what you're doing now. Ultimately, advertising is still advertising. Ultimately, it is about getting that message out there and breaking through the noise like we've been discussing. And even though the amount of data we have, the technical abilities that we have become so much more powerful in the last year, in the last 3 years, in the last 10 years. What principles from when you started doing this with some of the first display ad networks, what principles are still very, very important today and perhaps sometimes forgotten about?
That's a great one. Great question. It reminds me of kind of like the Ogilvy on advertising and some of the 70s, 80s, 90s. Is an era of
even the Mad Men days.
Yeah, it's like there's. I think one of the things at eBay that really emphasized, and it maybe sounds silly, but the power of if you've got like 10 powerful like channels or very powerful messaging, and a company that size, especially the way they were and the way they operated. There's so many different ways to take away. It's like, Beanie Babies, collectible cars, like stereos, iPhones, like whatever the thing was. Easy to get lost at a company like that in terms of what are you selling. But I think if you can have a unified message across all your touch points and that brand message is consistent, that's something we've actually done with, for example, some smaller projects that we've worked on in some B2B space where we've really tried to continually showcase the logo in a way that you're constantly seeing that same image over across multiple touch points, even it's something that minor and that subtle and that simple. But in my experience at the eBay internet marketing team, it was that point was a big takeaway for me of like, especially at a larger company with so many marketing initiatives, how do you kind of keep driving home that same message across? So when that's done right, that message becomes so much more powerful as opposed to creating noise in your own message or convoluting the message to the customer. Let's be clear about what we are across all things. So when someone sees you twice, 3 times, 4 times, or just once, they know the message you're trying to get across. That's a big one. I think the concept of onboarding and think about getting folks from one stage of the process to another. If you think about digital being around 20 years or so, right? So much of that is fixable, improvable from a CRO A/B testing perspective. And that's another thing we found, which is great about things like Instapage, is that it allows for that more effectively. It allows us to do that more effectively. So I don't think it's forgotten principle, but it's like getting someone through that process more seamlessly is surprisingly forgotten in cases. Like, yes, there's pockets of folks that are pros at A/B testing. Yes, there's pockets of CRO people who are phenomenal, but I'm still surprised of how often that isn't thought through or maybe QA'd or maybe thought about in terms of what is the user's experience through this product and how do we make it easy and helpful and more seamless for them.
So on that note, in the context of everything that we've talked about, where do you think this is all going? Where do you think personalization, advertising, breaking through the noise with a unique value proposition, where is this all headed in the future?
It's really interesting. I think that the concept of modern growth teams is something that has happened at Facebook. It's happened at LinkedIn. It's happened at a lot of companies here in the Bay Area and Silicon Valley. And I think especially if the Andreessen thesis comes true, as software is eating the world in some ways, I think there is some truth to that. And I think in a lot of ways, growth, you and I know it, a lot of teams here in the Bay Area know it. I think those are principles and ideas that are going to spread and are going to grow, and I think they're going to be more prevalent, and I think they're going to become more standardized, and I think more large firms, large consulting firms, large Fortune 500s, I think are looking at ways to acquire and adopt, and I think the typical marketing teams are going to evolve and change and become more growth-like in their capacity. And I think that will impact how we rise above the noise and how we look at doing marketing well, measuring performance. It's going to be interesting to see where it heads. I mean, I think you've got a next wave of platforms, right? In some ways, we've kind of reached the peak PC. We've reached perhaps peak cell phone in terms of the features and the things that are coming out. But I think those platforms are still, especially mobile, still has a lot of room. I mean, you're looking at mobile rates where the eyeballs and attention are there, but the rates and the ad dollars have not yet fully flowed there to mobile. Mm-hmm. So as much as mobile is been there, done that for a lot of people, especially like in gaming and more mature mobile platforms like that, I think there's still more to be done on mobile from a doing it right, catching up, getting the rest of the world's, mobile IQ up, right? Like the top gaming companies, the top companies in the world have figured it out, but I think there's a lot more to be done. Think of all the consumer brands in the United States that haven't yet optimized for mobile, or it's surprising how many are not doing that. And I think there's always platforms. You think about Snapchat, VR, what they're doing with their little sunglasses and vending machines, and the VR opportunity is crazy and massive. So there's all these emerging platforms that can then be used as the next wave. Andrew Chen does a great job of describing this in terms of you've got new platforms that are going to, if you're the first to that new platform, you are going to benefit from such a phenomenal awareness. And the first CTRs on banner ads were, through the roof, right? Now they're brutal.
Yeah.
So, being the early adopter can help as well. So, Yep.
Awesome. One of the things that we like to do during this podcast and at Instapage is give this podcast in many ways is an opportunity for us to kind of give back to the broader tech community here in Silicon Valley and obviously beyond as well. What's the best way that people can check you guys out? People can follow you as an individual, as Tye, or as Round Barn?
Great question. Well, obviously, much appreciated. Would love for you to check out our website at roundbarnlabs.com. Give us any feedback you have. Drop us a note. We're looking at adding a lot more to that, obviously, over time, products being one of them. And then for me, I actually do really enjoy consuming data and news and information and learning on Twitter. On it a fair amount at Tye DeGrange and also at Round Barn Labs. And so really enjoy connecting with folks there, learning, following folks. So it's another way to follow us as well. Or, like we're doing now, come on by our office, come check out ThoughtBot on 2nd and Mission, and come check out Round Barn Labs down in Soma, and we'd love to have you here.
Right in the heart of San Francisco.
There you go. Yeah, come on.
LinkedIn's right there, Google's right there, everyone's right here.
Yeah, come visit us, and we can introduce you to the team and chat about growth and learn about what you're doing.
Awesome. Tye, it's been a pleasure coming to your office. It's been a pleasure meeting you, and I'm sure we'll talk soon.
Thank you so much, Andrew. I really appreciate it. Really enjoyed talking with you today.
Here are the takeaways from our conversation with Tye DeGrange. With the correct implementation and proper testing of your data sources, granular data, analytics, and quantitative information provides tremendous insight to inform your hypotheses as a marketer and make science-based decisions on your marketing campaigns. However, the qualitative elements of customer feedback are still essential for creating a product and a value proposition that resonates with their needs. More importantly, listening to qualitative information about how your customers engage with the product can help you become a more flexible marketer when necessary. On a very similar note, be a flexible marketer. Just because one channel is driving the majority of your revenue and other KPIs doesn't mean it's guaranteed to perform that way in the future. As platforms and technologies change, marketers must be willing to shift gears when necessary. It's essential to be flexible and open to change, especially when the data and qualitative information at hand indicates the need for a pivot within your product and within your personas. Marketing is always and will continue to always be changing. New marketing technologies, channels, and platforms are developing at an increasingly faster rate every single year. And even though some platforms may appear saturated, a closer look at different pieces of data illustrates that the most significant impacts of specific channels might be yet to come, and that especially applies to mobile. Well, I think you can see why I was so especially excited to share that conversation with you. Tye had some great insights, especially with his ideas of what makes up successful modern marketing teams, including having an engineer and a product manager there as well. It is awesome that he was able to make the time to hang out with us for the past 30 minutes or so, and as always, along with every other episode, you'll find a complete transcript and the show notes page at instapage.com/podcast. And while you've got your web browser open, if you are so inclined, you're more than welcome to drop me an email. It's ander@instapage.com, ANDER@instapage.com. And seriously, I would absolutely love to hear from anyone who has anything to say about this episode, or any of our other guests, or anything else that might be on your mind for that matter. If there is anything I or the rest of my team at Instapage can do to help you and your marketing, I'd be thrilled to see what we might be able to do for you. Speaking of the rest of my team, for our next episode, I'm very, very excited to introduce you to someone I work with every day and who is absolutely one of the sharpest and smartest marketers that I've ever had the privilege of working with personally. Saranya Babu, our VP of Marketing here at Instapage. Saranya started out as a software engineer, actually, and eventually moved into marketing. Now, she is what I would call a B2B marketing expert, and she's crafted this very interesting and very effective skill set that achieves an incredibly powerful synthesis between storytelling, product marketing, branding and positioning, evaluating the customer journey of different personas. She does so many things so well, and I know you're going to see exactly what I mean, so I certainly hope to see you here for the next episode. My name is Ander, and this is Advertising Influencers, powered by Instapage, where our mission is to continually lower the cost of customer acquisition. Cheers to your future success, and cheers to better marketing. I will talk to you soon.
Advertising Influencers. Conversations with today's top-tier marketers from Silicon Valley and beyond. Powered by Instapage, the most powerful landing page solution.